TSF Entertainment.
Yo, and welcome back to TSF Entertainment. This time we're bringing you BMF Episode 6 Casualties of War Review and Recap. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. Episode 6 synopsis says Meech plans to travel to St. Louis to link up with J-Pusha. He hopes to build business in St. Louis and expand BMF. Terry returns to Detroit to welcome the new addition to the family. So the episode kicks off where we see Remy and Claude, but Remy is giving a eulogy for Milton's funeral, who was the little kid who got unalived last episode by Glock. While he's giving his eulogy, Meech ends up showing up to the funeral. Meech comes over to Remy and Claude and says, I'm just here to pay my respects. A little kid was unalived for no reason. Which Claude, we saw, he respected that immediately. Like his facial expressions, everything, we could tell like he respected that. But Remy, as stubborn as always, all he's seeing is red and thinking Meech is, he's being ballsy as he says. And he tells Claude after Meech leaves, like it's on site anytime he sees him, and just gives him the green light that like, hey, you see him, take him out. At the same time, while this is going on, we have Bryant at Kevin's funeral along with his ex-wife Gloria, which for those who haven't seen the last episode, we all know Kevin unalived himself, which was extremely, man, that was one of the worst scenes of that episode, last episode, probably the whole season of BMF. Like that whole thing was just, yeah, it was very disheartening. But he's here at the grave burial for Kevin. And at the same time, Terry is right along the way in the exact same cemetery attending Diesel's funeral, which Brian happens to end up seeing. And he walks over and he says that Diesel, none of them deserve to be at the same cemetery, the same field, whatnot, while his son Kevin is there. And Brian's get pissed off and he ends up pushing Terry inside the grave where the casket is going to go and kicks dirt on him. I don't know about y'all, but there's no way on God's green earth that I would have let Brian walk away from that. I'm sorry. You're just not going to push me into a 6-foot hole that is meant for a cemetery and then you're going to kick dirt on me. Basically, at that point, it's violations. It's almost you spitting in my face. But T lets it slide because he's already tired of all the bloodshed. So back in Atlanta, BMF is back at Duffy's crib where they toast up for Rip after Rip was unalived by the MKs. Meech tells the crew to come to his crib for the repast so they can all link up, have a good time, and just reminisce about Rip. At the same time, Meek tells Duffy he went to Milton's funeral, which Duffy is just like, why would you do that? And basically, Meek tells him his plans and why he did what he did, which was basically just plant the seed in with Claude, which we'll discuss later on in this review. But to plant a seed in Claude to hopefully get Claude to come over to BMF and he can take out Remy at the exact same time. Go back here, we have Terry who is talking to Meech and he's like, yo, man, this got to stop. At some point, we're going to start losing members if this continues. Meech gives him this, speech and advice on how to lead and how to spread wealth to his crew. Basically telling him, show them they appreciate it, show them how to be a leader. Once you do that, everything's going to fall in line, which I see both sides because I see Terry's side. He's like, hey, man, look, there's too much bloodshed going on, which it has been. People are getting taken out left and right. There's got to be a different way. But I also see Meech points and agree with it. Like, hey, this comes with the territory. This comes with the job. If you want to be a leader, you got to lead. And during this moment, LaWanda walks in as she's been having contractions on and off all day. And Terry proceeds to tell her, I've been to 5 different funerals. I'm just tired of the bloodshed. And he also thinks about his unborn child as well as, Terry Jr. Like, hey, I want to be around to actually see my kids. So here at one point, I thought Terry was actually just going to try to get out of the game once again, but we didn't get that. So here, as Meech pulls up to his crib, his neighbor, Miss Watson, comes over and tells him, like, hey, they're still waiting on your paperwork. Um, Trying to find out, what's your occupation? Like, we need this paperwork. Where Meech says, like, hey, I won the lotto, after she sees his car and says, you're very young to be driving that. She also tells him that, like, hey, you need to clean up your yard. The HOA says, your grass is only supposed to be a certain amount. Where Meech's response is, he lets her know, like, hey, leave me alone and I won't tell your husband about the men that you have coming in and out of the house while he's gone. The one dope thing that I did like about this scene is that they gave us a background history on how the HOA was created and why HOA was created, which I'm not going to really divulge and get into because it'll be a while. But if you saw the episode, you saw exactly what I'm saying. That was very dope. So they gave us a history lesson the same way how they did for the episode with Jack the Rapper. So here back the Flenory home, we have Lucille and Charles, and they all love getting cozy and everything. And Nicole ends up coming downstairs and say, "Oh, hey, I see you guys are back together." Where Lucille says Charles was just saying good morning, which rubs Charles the wrong way. And during this same interaction, the phone rings. Nicole picks it up, which I already knew it was none other than Dr. Maurice, but she lied to say you have the wrong number, but at the same time she's looking at Miss Lucille, so like Lucille knows that it's Dr. Maurice that's calling. So after she leaves, Charles says to Lucille, like, why would you say that we're not back together? Like, we've been doing all of this, we've been having fun, like, in a sense, like rekindling our romance or whatnot. And that's where Lucille just says, she's been approached to be the assistant pastor, and she's starting to feel like a hypocrite about, this perfect image of their family and whatnot. And Charles just like, hey, man, don't let it dim your light. I'm going to get this family back together, and I'm going to start with us, and I'm going to make this work. He also tells her that, hey, remember, Maurice had you, but you picked me instead. So here we have T at Henrietta's spot, and T coming there and is saying that, hey, I don't want no more static. I'm just trying to come to an agreement where there's no more bloodshed. There's been too much bloodshed. Henrietta ain't trying to hear that at all. Henrietta's like, yo, I should chop your neck off right here while you standing in front of me. But instead, I'm going to break it down slow and make it as most painful as possible as I destroy BMF, inch by inch, as they say on Snowfall, my man, brick by brick. There was also an encounter in this scene where T and Diz kind of make eye contact. They look at each other. And to me, that was the most stupidest thing that I could, like, like, you just made yourself super obvious that Terry. Like, you've been working for Henrietta for so long, and like as soon as Terry comes around, you acting all funny. You could barely look at him and whatnot. And then the fact that you didn't think that any of them would peep that is crazy to me. So I knew right then and there the writing was on the wall for Diz once he did that whole little interaction with Terry. So here back in Atlanta, we have Remy, who is now going to the mattresses. And if you know what going to the mattresses is, you know what going to the mattresses is. But anyway, he's going to the mattresses. He's getting prepared of everything. Which the way he was grabbing the guns, I'm thinking like, he's prepared to go to war with, I don't know, back with Meech or get back at Glock, but all in all, he's prepared to go to war. And Claude tells Remy, your eulogy was very powerful at the funeral, and in not in so many words, he agreed with Meech and that, they should join up to take out Glock. Well, Remy ain't feeling that. He's basically like, just, hey man, Meech is a snake. Like, I don't trust him. So what you gonna do? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's your idea? You gonna ride with us, or all of a sudden now you all over Meech? Well, Remy tells him like, hey man, some of our crew is now running with Glock, so we need to be smart about this. Remy is still stubborn, and he's like, nah, I'm gonna get all the Atlanta clicks together. They gonna move when I say move, so that's what it's gonna be. And Claude don't agree with this, and I don't blame Claude because Claude is correct. Like at this point, it's like, hey man, we just lost a little kid that we quote unquote were supposed to protect in our hood, and we didn't protect him. And Meech had already gave us a warning about this, and we could have joined up and took our Glock right then and there. But you know, you can't see the bigger picture or whatnot. So here at the police station, the chief comes up and he grills Bryant about the whole situation of what happened to Detective Amberson, and he just tells him like, "Hey, I just showed up at Jen's house. Shots rang out, whatnot." And he proceeds to tell him that like your suspension is over. You are completely fired, which Brian has no problem with that because now in Brian's mind, he has the green light where he can go and do anything he wants to since he's no longer a police officer. He doesn't care no more. He has a chip on his shoulder and he wants everybody gone. So he's going to do everything his way. And this is where, the chief asks Jen, what's going on. And she tells him what her and Amberson were working on before she got unalived and what the information that Bryant had told her about Henrietta. But in the end, because of the entire thing with Bryant and with Amberson, she is now suspended. So here we have a scene where Terry is asleep, and while him and Markeisha, they doing what they do, she ends up getting shot in the back. Now, I don't know if this is a foreshadowing of things, but it really seems like that's what it is. Seems like it's a foreshadowing coming. I just can't see why he would randomly have this dream. I mean, especially with her, I understand, he's done lost a lot of people lately, but like I would think that it would possibly be him dreaming. But anyways, I have a feeling like this is a foreshadowing of what's going to come before the season is out. That possibly, if it's not Markeisha, it might be another loved one of his that gets unalived. But anyway, Terry wakes up, he's screaming. Markeisha, is like, what the hell is going on? And she also gets mad at Terry for not telling her that he went to Atlanta. And he's like, yo, man, I just went to Atlanta for business. It was a quick trip. During the same time, he's telling her about Henrietta and, how he just wants everything to come to peace. And she gives some information that says, hey, you need to go see Blaze because that's Henrietta's father. I'm sure, if anything, he can be the one that's going to stop the war between you and her. So back at Meech's crib, they have a whole thing and dinner. I'm sorry, not a whole thing, where, you know, he's just like, I appreciate all of y'all, man. Like, I know everything has been crazy. We just lost Rep. We lost a lot of soldiers, but I appreciate y'all. And from this point on, we just gonna celebrate every day while we here. So get back here. As we all know, Brian is all hell bent on taking out Henrietta as he blames her for Kevin being unalived. So he rolls up in her spot, knocks everybody down, come with the 12 gauge, ready to take her out. But he didn't realize that her pops Blaze was there along, and the rest of the crew that he knocked up ends up coming in there. And Blaze tells Detective Bryant, like, yo, I can't let you, unalive my daughter. Like, hey, you got to let this one go. I get it. You know, your child is gone because of what she did, but I can't let you unalive her. So eventually we know that Bryant puts the gun down, and as someone said in the background, we got to teach him a lesson. They practically beat Bryant up, didn't kill him, but beat him up to the point where they knocked him out and left him outside along with all of his guns. So we have Duffy here driving down the street, and as he's driving down the street, the Red Dogs cut him off. They cut him off and pull him out of his car and just immediately start harassing him. Now, we haven't seen the Red Dogs, I want to say, since episode 1. I think we saw a little bit of them of Jack the Rapper, but we haven't seen their tactics since, I believe it's episode 1, where they jumped on Claude and Remy and gave them a beatdown. Again, if you don't know the infamous Red Dogs, you need to do some research on them, because this is literally how they were. And they hem Duffy up on his car. And at the same time, one of the Red Dogs sees Meech and lets his dog loose, and Meech gets up out of there. So back at the Flenory home, we have Nicole and Lucille, and Lucille is giving Nicole pills and telling her that she needs to take these pills. And once again, Nicole reiterates, like, yo, I'm not having sex. If anybody needs to take these pills, it needs to be you, which immediately pisses off Mama Lucille. Mama Lucille says, hey, if you want to say something, you can say something to me, but you're not going to disrespect me in my house. So let's get that out the way right now. Which, if you grew up, you know this is exactly how your mama grabbed you up anytime you got disrespectful in a house. I immediately had countless flashbacks as a kid from doing this. So I had already knew, and we all know Mama Lucille don't play. But anyways, let's get back into it. Mama Lucille tells her, no, if you want to say it, you got to be respectful about it. So they have this conversation, and Nicole tells her, like, hey, I'm not going to get pregnant. I'm not going to have sex. I'm not understanding. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you forcing this on me? And Lucille tells her, because I don't want you to end up how I was. And I knew that it hurt Lucille to say that, as well as I think it hurt Nicole, because in a sense, from a child's mind, it's like, oh, so you saying, like, I'm holding you down, or I messed up your life or whatnot. But after hearing that, Nicole says, like, I'm not going to be like you. I'm not going to be like LaWanda or Mareshia. I'm not going to be like any of y'all. I'm going to make sure, like, I'm better than y'all. So after listening to Mareshia, Terry here meets up with Blaze, and he goes to Blaze to talk to Blaze, and having this whole powwow with Henrietta to stop the bloodshed, where Blaze respects him for coming to him man to man, what he's out there doing in the streets. But he says, like, hey, I can't stop the war. I That's family, so I can't stop the war. But I will speak to Henrietta for you. Now that right there let me know that, like, Blaze is getting tired of his daughter, like, immediately, because he easily could have just said nah and get the hell out my house. You know what I'm saying? He could have immediately saw him as, like, you're the enemy. I don't care what you doing or what you trying to accomplish. Get the hell out of my house. But by Blaze doing this, that lets me know that he's not feeling none of the stuff that his daughter is doing. And I think at some point, which there's a scene, and I'll reiterate it on it more, that we're possibly going to see Henrietta and her pops come. They is probably be in a face off or something. So back here at Meech's crib, Meech is getting worried as he cannot get a hold of Duffy and wondering why Duffy is still locked up, as it should only be a 48-hour hold. But at the same time, he's more worried about Duffy because Duffy has warrants, and he knows that if they find this out, then it's a wrap for Duffy. While that's going on, um, Angel here does tell him that, hey, Greeny's been MIA as well, and it's some ADAs that come to the club, and I could try to get info from them if you want. And Meech says that's a good idea and pays her. That part I didn't understand because I'm like, okay, Meech, are you pimping her? Like, if this is your girl, why are you giving her bread to get info from the ADAs? Like what is it? Like, are you pimping her? Does she work for you? Like, why are you giving her bread to do that? Didn't understand that whole scene at all. And then during that time, Miss Watson comes over again, banging on the door, and comes outside, and she hands them a HOA fine because of Meech's grass situation. And Angel comes out and looks, in my opinion, she just looks stupid because I didn't understand why the money was just sitting there in her bra sticking out. I was like, okay, like what was the significance of that? But anyways, comes out and they both just laugh at Miss Watson and end up burning the HOA fine that Miss Watson gave to Meech. So Terry here is back at his apartment while they are counting up money, and Terry pretty much listens to what Meech told him. At the same time, he's letting Diz know that, hey, I'm going to need your help as we expand, and eventually we're going to take over Henrietta's territories. And Diz is like, hey, I'm about to do some vegan burger spots or whatever, so I'm going to have some kitchen material, um, where we can move the work and do that type of stuff. And again, once again, right here, once I saw this, I knew that it was over. It was over for this. The writing was on the wall. We knew it was a wrap after this. Like, yep, we already know in these shows, once they start to get focused on a certain person, that we know that it's about their time to go. And after that, again, Terry listens to Meech and takes his advice, and he hands out Detroit Piston jackets, which, if y'all from that era, y'all know all about the starter jackets. No matter whether they was the Bulls, Pistons, Raiders, etc., whatever, it was a jacket to have. And he gives them all Detroit Piston uh, jackets and gives them tickets to the game while he goes off and handles other business. So while Meech is grabbing himself something to eat, Claude pulls up on him, where Meech is like, in a sense, he's like, it's about time. So after Claude pulls up on Meech, he asks Meech, like, yo, what's your plan? Like, if I'm gonna join you, I need to know exactly what's your plan. And Meech just tells him, like, hey man, look, my stuff is the best. You join over here, everything's gonna be pure. We're also gonna be partners. We're not gonna be competitors. Like, come over on this side. Which I was actually kind of surprised that Claude is even there, but we could see the writing was on the wall for that as well. But Claude agrees, and he says, you got to show ATL some love. And Meech tells him, you handle the stuff with Remy, we'll wipe the whole slate clean. Here at Blaze's house, they're having a whole dinner, and Blaze tells Henrietta that, I spoke with T, which pisses her off. And it's like, of course he came over my head. Well, Blaze tells her that, like, yo, I brought you here for two reasons. One is to make amends with everyone in here, as you took out a cop, which now has cost us cover. Like, because of how you move and the dealings that you're doing, you messed up everything that was, that we had. Like, this is you just destroyed what we had because you had this tantrum and you went and sprayed up and you took out a cop. And Green King is like, nah, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not making amends with nobody up in here. And he also tells her that, hey, you are going to make this deal where y'all are going to come to an agreement with T, and y'all going to stop this because it's already a bad name on my company. And we also, the one thing that we did get in this scene, her father kind of touched on her sexuality just a little bit by saying, this isn't the person that I raised. Like, this is not the woman I raised. And, Henry says, oh, why? Because you wanted a boy? And he's like, no. He was like, I raised you to be pretty and all this other stuff. And to me, that was like, it was kind of like I said, he was kind of just touching on that situation of her sexuality, but not in so many words. But I can tell because, Henry says, like, yo, this is who I am. Like, you need to get used to it. And at the end, they end up to discover that, Diz is working with T, as Tyson pointed it out, that they looked at each other funny. And Henrietta, who was about to do like her father said and make the deal with T, she's like, nah, I'm not doing it now because of, Diz being an implant and turning his back against her and working with Terry. So here we have an ADA that Angel was speaking about earlier, and this ADA, we don't get his name, ends up giving Angel all the information. We end up finding out that Brainy got arrested by the GBI, and while he did, he ended up lying and saying that Meech unalived somebody. I guess that was his way of getting back at Meech, because we heard Greeny say, like, hey, I'm gonna get y'all. So I guess this is his way of getting back at Meech, is by making up an untrue story that he has some help in taking out this person named Big Mike. Well, when we get back to Meech's crib, Duffy is already there. Duffy is finally out and he's all beaten up. And he tells Meech, like, hey, the Red Dogs did this. This is what they can do. They, in a sense, I felt like they was beating Duffy to try to get some type of information out of him, and probably more than likely on Meech. But of course, Duffy didn't give up no info. Angel comes home and tells him that, hey, I've heard the information I got from the ADA that the GBI is on you. From what Greeny told them, Greeny said that, you helped him, unalive somebody. And in that same time, Laz shows up and tells him, the GBI basically want him to testify on Meech for that same unaliving of this character, Big Mike. So they all come together. Meech calls everybody from BMF over to the house, and he tells everybody in the crib that, like, hey, he's going to St. Louis until the heat dies down. It's like, I'm not abandoning y'all, but I'm about to set up some shop out in St. Louis with J-Pusha. So y'all keep on keeping the shit moving. I'ma still send y'all money. I'ma still be checking up on y'all. Don't think just because I ain't here that, like, you just not gonna do nothing. You're gonna keep it moving. Same time, Angel comes up and is like, hey, like, I want to go with you. And Meech just like, nah, I'm going by myself. And that's where, to me, Angel could have done the most stupidest thing she could have ever done. And we've been talking about Angel this entire season, how we thought she wasn't trustworthy, how we thought she was going to try to set up Meech and whatnot. And we see here she just shows her hand. And I want to say, like, it could have been a possibility where she only did that to kind of force Meech's hand to take her with him. But that was the most stupidest thing that you could ever say. And she tells him that, like, oh, okay, well, I can go and join Glock. And I'm just like, you would really say that like right after you know what Glock did? Like Glock just took out one of our peoples from the BMF crew, and this is what you do. And that's where Meech was just like, you know what? I can't trust you. You out of my circle of trust, and you got to go. Me, she would have had to go right then and there. I wouldn't even have left my crib until I known that she was out of my crib. Period. Like, nah, you're just not going to sit up here and disrespect me at the same time threaten to go jump with my rival enemy, especially after he's taken out somebody in the crew. So I don't know what this is going forward for Angel. Not sure if we even going to see her anymore the rest of the season. So we got Mama Lucille over here getting ready for her date, and Charles shows up and she's like, hey, we grown. I'ma tell you, I'm going on a date with Dr. Maurice. It is what it is. You know, which we all know. Charles feeling a certain type of way. And he just says, you know what? I'ma fall back and I'm gonna let you do whatever you have to do, to get it, I guess in a sense, like, get it all out until you're ready for us to get back on board. Which Charles is a better man than me, but it's just at the same time, it's like, hey, Charles, you made this bed, so now you got to lay in it. Like now, Lucille, she running the show, so you got to go with it. And we got Mama Lucille. She's out here with Dr. Maurice. He wine and dining her. They all just having a very, very good time out here at dinner. At the same time, we got Terry and Markeisha going out, and Markeisha think that they are going to some extravagant, fancy restaurant. And she mentions that, after all the stuff that's going on, they should take, a vacation. And Terry says that's a great idea. I would love that, but it's going to have to be after LaWanda has the baby, which we all saw Markeisha got upset about. So now we're starting to see Markeisha's jealousy streak. And it's starting to look like that it could have been possible that she might have actually been the one to call CPS. Maybe, and we've touched on this before, um, that on this theory that it possibly could have been her to get back at Terry. But at the same time, it's not making sense because, why would she do that and then help Terry? But in a way, it does make sense because it's like, hey, I'm the one who did it, so now I can finally get Terry. So I don't know. So again, remember that foreshadowing of the dream that Terry had that might end up coming into fruition because we see Markeisha is getting on a real jealousy streak now. So he ends up taking Markeisha to his restaurant, which, she is already unhappy, as she thought they were going out somewhere extravagant, very fancy. And while they're there, she ends up turning off his pager and cell phone because she already knew that the phone was going to ring. And 9 times out of 10, it was end up going to be LaWanda, and she was trying to have Terry all to herself. While that's ongoing, we still have Lucille and Dr. Maurice. They're out at dinner and they out at dancing and whatnot. And Maurice is doing the same thing as Charles. He's like, hey, I'm going to do whatever I can to get you back in my life. You were my first love. You're the love of my life. I have a chance. And so I'm going for it, which we see right here. During this same time as they're dancing, Dr. Maurice gets beat, and it's none other than Nicole, who ends up finding Dr. Maurice's card that her mom had around, and she calls Dr. Maurice and lets him know that LaWanda is going into labor. She's called 911, and they still haven't showed up yet. So Dr. Maurice and Lucille end up showing up, and LaWanda ends up having the baby. And Dr. Maurice was the one to help. At the same time, Charles ends up showing up wondering like what's going on. This man is in my house. As we already know, Charles is not already feeling because he's trying to win Lucille back and Dr. Maurice is in the way. And Terry comes too late, and we also find out that the cook, quote, not necessarily snitched, but just gave out the information of what he was doing at the restaurant. And she knows that he was with Mareshia, and she doesn't want to be around him whatsoever or wants him to be around the baby. Charles grabs Terry and say, "Hey man, let's just go outside and let's get some fresh air." And in that same moment, he tells Dr. Maurice, "That's not your son," because Dr. Maurice says to Terry, "Son, you did a good job," or whatnot, something along those lines. And Charles, like I said, he's already not feeling Dr. Maurice, so he says to him like, "Yo, that's not your son." After seeing all of that, and I don't blame her, Nicole immediately runs upstairs and she takes her birth control pills, because after saying all that, she's like, "I don't want to go through any of that at all." So this was it. This scene right here was actually hilarious. Like, now she's listening, and now she's going to make sure she's going to be nothing like them at all. So before the show ended, we got Meech back at the restaurant, and he meets up with Claude. And Claude lets him know, like, "Hey, man, we got another crew who is in on this, but we got to tread this lightly." And Meech is like, "You have to tread this lightly because this is your doing. And so, you know, you tell them what the bigger picture is, and I guarantee you, everything's gonna fall in line." He's like, "Yo, I'm gonna holler at you when I get back." And Claw's like, "You leaving me to do this all by myself? I thought we was gonna tag team it." And again, Meech doing his usual motivational speeches. He lets them know, like, "Hey man, you got to do this." You know what I'm saying? Like, you the one who got to lead. I can't be the leader for everything. This is your crew, so you got to leave. Like, don't worry about it. I will be back here, and we'll discuss everything once I get back and you have taken out Remy. So here, man, this whole scene here just annoyed me. It just really pissed me off. But we got Diz here, who is chilling in his car smoking after the Pistons game. None other than Henrietta comes with a whole blowtorch, flamethrower, whatever. Matter of fact, it is a flamethrower. She comes with a flamethrower and comes and sets Diz on fire. The problem I had with this whole scene is, one, like, that choice of flamethrower, number one. But then two, mainly, like, if this is supposed to be outside of the Pistons arena, so you're telling me that nobody else was outside the arena during this time where they could have saw her set Diz on fire? Like, come on, man. Like, really? Like, at some point, somebody had to be out there and see Henrietta with this huge flamethrower and set him on fire. And then mainly, it's like, I'm not understanding. As soon as Diz saw her and saw what she had in her hand, how he didn't know something was up. I'm thinking like, yo, not even that. Just the fact that she popped up should have just been, the light bulb should have went off immediately, and you pull out your strap and take her out. But none of that happened, and this man gets set on fire, and that is the end of this. And it's how the episode ended. And not to mention, she even left the flamethrower there. So it's like, you want to leave a flamethrower there with all your fingerprints all over it? Like, come on, man. But the episode ends, so we're gonna go ahead and get into some sneak previews for the episode next week. And we see Terry, who is over LaWanda's house, looking at his newborn child, and LaWanda is going off and saying, "Hey, won't you spend time with your babies? Won't you spend overnight with your children instead of going out and being with Mareshia?" So I'm thinking this is LaWanda's final point. Just to give a little prediction, she's had enough, and she's probably again threatening to take the kids from Terry and probably move because Terry's so busy up Mareshia. And you know, Terry led her astray again, saying, "I want to be there for my family," but he's too busy with Mareshia. We also see that Dr. Maurice is not letting up and he's sending Lucille flowers, which pisses Charles off. And Lucille tells him, like, yo, I'm the one who decides in this house, like, as far as, what's going on between her and Dr. Maurice. Nobody else is going to tell me what to do with Dr. Maurice or with you. Like, I'm going to make the decision what's best for me in my life. Now, here's an interesting scene right here that we saw is both of them at the police station. Now, I don't know if this is, they just put it there, just to show like they're at odds at the moment, or if they were actually at the police station. I'm very interested to wonder why they're at the police station. The only thing I could possibly think of is maybe something happened with Nicole. It's the only reason. I can't see any other reason why they will pull them into the police station, but we'll have to wait for next week's episode. And then here we see a van roll up, and it looks like they're about to start spraying at J-Pusha and Meech while he's in St. Louis. We also finally get to see Saweetie's character, Kia, and she is supposed to be his St. Louis love interest. So I'm actually also interested to see as to why they're coming up to try to spray J-Pusha and Meech in them as well. Here we see, which we know that's the restaurant. Terry got a strap out and he is throwing it on the table, and I'm sure because he's ready to go to war with Henrietta as she took out Diz, which we all know was his close friend. So now we already know he's going to be out for blood, and he is going to, as we saw him early in the season, he's trying to, make his name known. He's like, show that, like, he's a man and this is what happens when you disrespect him. So this scene right here is very interesting. I can't tell if that's the Saweetie character Kia, or if this is LaWanda who has a bat in her hand, and why she has a bat in her hand, as well as what or who she's hitting. I'm starting to lean more towards this is LaWanda, and maybe she is either beating up Terry's Range Rover, or could possibly maybe she's had enough and she's caught up with Mareshia, and this is it. She just wailing on her. But like again, I said, I can't tell exactly who that is. That might not be Mareshia. I mean, LaWanda. That could actually be Saweetie's character Kia, or it could just be a character that we haven't seen at all. So y'all drop y'all comments below and let us know exactly what you think of episode 6. Episode 6. We love to hear your comments and we love to hear your theories. And also, please make sure to like and subscribe.